James Liggins. Good brother, I'm so glad to have you here on Unstuck. Thank you for being a part.
Tim Terrentine, I am excited to be here, brother. It's we go back a long way, and it's wonderful to have a nice sit down conversation with you and talk about thoughts and life in general, I guess.
Absolutely. And we're glad to have you. It's a time where the law is talked about a lot, and you are the lawyer. And so I'm looking forward to talking to you about the law. But long before you became a lawyer, long before you helped so many organizations, you came from a community of people, a community of love. And I want to ask you about that. How was it growing up, little James Liggins? And how does that really inform what you're doing today in the community and in your business?
That's a good question, Tim. I'm from Kalamazoo. You know that. Born and raised here. So I grew up on the east side of Kalamazoo off of Gilbert and Hotop. And as a matter of fact, my family home is still in the family. My mom just left that home maybe about 2 years ago. And so it's still under our care over there, right up the street from Dairy Queen, or the old Dairy Queen down there.
That's right.
I grew up, man, in a faith-based home. My father was a minister. My mother was very active in the church. Mother and father were in my life from the beginning until my dad passed away in 2020. But man, wonderful relationship. Got three siblings, or I had three siblings, two sisters and a brother. Um, my father was really the kind of dad that showed you more by doing as well as by talking. And one of the things that he showed us and poured into us was the need and the responsibility to care for those around us. That it doesn't matter whether or not somebody has the same blood running through you or not. You have just as much responsibility for those that are in your sphere of influence as you do for those who are your family members. And so that is a lesson that I took along with me throughout my high school career and then college career and law school career and or law school journey, and then back here when I began practicing law. Is that the idea is that I really needed to be active, engaged, and a resource to the community to which I grew up in and that I live in.
Mm. And you made a very specific choice around that because let's face it, by the time you graduated law school, you were quite marketable. You could have gone anywhere to practice law, but you had a purpose bigger than location, and you wanted to come home. I think that's powerful. Those of us who hang around to give back, that's powerful, man. It's honorable.
I appreciate that, man. I worked to get back to Kalamazoo. I really did. I went out as soon as I graduated from law school, Michigan State. My first job was in Indianapolis, and this was right before I got married, 2 years before I got married. And so I stayed in Indianapolis 2 years, and then when I got married, we made a conscious decision to move back to Michigan. And I was in Jackson, Michigan, at Consumers Energy for a couple of years, and then when we got pregnant with our son Justin, it was when I said, "Okay, it's time to move back to Kalamazoo, where we said we were going." So I was really
Yeah,
happy to be able to come back home.
that's awesome. Now, before I don't want to put the headline ahead of the story now too much, because before you ever won awards as a lawyer, you were a state champion mock trial champ.
Oh,
And you went back and coached state championship and national champion mock trial. So, but I don't know that everybody knows mock trial and what that means and the power of learning civics and learning how to express yourself and make an argument. Talk about the value of that and the impact of that on your life. And
sure.
maybe even some encouragement if you think it's a good idea for folks today to get involved with.
Really appreciate that. Let me say the opportunity to talk a little bit about that, because mock trial for me was formative. When I was in high school, I had a teacher who saw something in me and was kind of just took me to the side and said, "You need to be a part of this." And I didn't know what it was at first, but then she explained what it was. Is mock trial is basically, it's a little bit like forensics. It's a team, a scholastic team of about 12 individuals that these students, they receive a case scenario from the state of Michigan, and they have to basically prepare both the prosecution or the plaintiff side of the case and the defense side of the case. They have to play the witnesses, they have to be the attorneys, and you actually have your one side of your team, so your prosecution or plaintiff will go up against the other side's defense, and then you'll switch sides and you'll go back and forth, and whoever gets the highest scores and the highest points is the ones that advance up to the state championships and eventually to the national championships. And Kalamazoo Central is a behemoth when it comes to high school mock trial. We are the dynasty to beat here, not just in Michigan, but across the nation. Actually, we are well known. When Kalamazoo Central is in the fight, it could be theirs on any year. So it's kind of fun to watch. But let me back up and just tell you that me personally, I the reason why I'm so enamored and full support of things like mock trial is because of the civic educational piece of it. Civic education really teaches our students how to think. It teaches us how to analyze. It teaches us how to, and quite honestly, all of the various topics and areas that you learn in school, math, science, English, all of these topics, STEM, everything kind of comes together in civic education programs because you have to use your knowledge of these certain areas to come together. Now, for us, for me personally, it also taught me how to work in a team, and it taught me how to how to be accountable. It taught me how to be responsible. It taught me how to manage my time. There's just so many positives that it does. But I truly believe that if civic education was highlighted more in our school systems, the students that we would be producing that then go on to high school, to college, and then go on to professional life or public life would have perhaps a better sense as to how to agree to disagree, how to have a conversation, how to have a hard conversation about a hard topic without resorting to headlines that you hear, but having done the research and done the thinking for yourself, so you come to your own understanding of your thoughts. And you also come to understand that other people's thought patterns and thought perspectives have validity. And so at times you might even come to understand how to change your mind about something. But it feels like in the time that we're in right now, it's really hard for people to have intelligent discourse. Discourse doesn't mean we agree. Discourse means we have a conversation and we voice our thoughts about things without demonizing people. And I think that that's where we need to go back to. And I think civic education is a great vehicle for that.
I tell you, man, Dr. King said it best. We've learned to fly the air like birds, but we ain't figured out how to sit down and reason together.
That's right. We
And I
have not.
think if you, is that one of those things that really could make a difference? I mean, like, is civics one of those inputs that have societal outputs, individual inputs that have societal outputs? When we talk about solutions in education or how to get kids who are otherwise left out brought in, is civics one of those paths?
Absolutely, it is. Tim, it's well, I can just tell you how it played out here in Kalamazoo. Is that it's one of those um, types of programs, at least there's others. There's things like We the People and the constitutional debates that they have that pulls from so many different demographics that actually has the ability to draw out. You would be surprised at the very meek shy person that starts in the program, and the confidence that is built up in them as they go through the program. And by the end, you have a whole person that has an identity and confidence. And it's not confidence or arrogance, but it is a understanding that they can think for themselves and they can articulate their thought process for themselves. I actually, honestly, Tim, I'm a right now I'm a for the State Bar of Michigan, which is the organization that governs the attorneys in Michigan. I'm one of the commissioners on the State Bar of Michigan right now. And one of the things that I'm pushing very strongly is the idea of a return back to our focus on civic education, because I do think that that will help the public discourse as a whole. And that's what I'm looking for, is that the public discourse starts to hopefully get back to the place where we can disagree across the aisle, but then go back outside and have lunch and dinner or coffee with somebody and have a wonderful relationship with folks, even though we might have a difference of opinion about something that is of public concern.
And I think our system is dependent upon that discourse. And when you have too many people who are not equipped and not emotionally managed in a way where we can have disagreement and discourse that's healthy, that's a real societal challenge. It's an organizational challenge. It's a team challenge. It's a community challenge. It's a relational challenge. And
And it seeps across every aspect of our society, Tim. It really does. When we get to the point where we're so polarized that nobody's listening to anybody, and the only reason why you're listening is to rebut, you're not listening to hear, we're in trouble, man. And it's playing out everywhere. It really is, and it's important for people who understand the importance of education and civics to really become champions of it. And so, I'm planning to be one of them. And so, you asked the question. Yes, I was a student, a team member. And then eventually I came back as a coach of the team, the Kalamazoo Central's team, and then somewhere along the way I stopped coaching, and then I ended up running the whole Michigan Civic Center for Civic Education's mock trial program that actually runs the whole program for the state of Michigan. So I believe in it that strongly. I really do. I think that it's important for us, and I think that uh, you know if you go back 20, 30 years, there was a bit more of a focus on civic education. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be the focus we have on STEM right now, but I do think we're seeing some results of not having as much of an intentional focus in that area. I didn't realize
Schoolhouse
this
Rock.
conversation would go that far into one of my passions, but that is one of my passions, man.
Listen, man, Schoolhouse Rock wasn't a bad thing.
It wasn't. I'm just a
We
Bill.
really do. I think we've lost a lot of the basics, which is why we're easily duped,
I think
right?
I
We don't
think we
have that
have.
practice.
I think we have, man. But I also believe that we can correct shit. We can
We
correct
can.
course. Yeah, I do
We
think
can.
that. Yep.
I believe it. I appreciate that piece of it about civic education because that really did wet your whistle in a lot of ways for what you're doing
Absolutely.
today. But it seems like it set the tone for your advocacy today. I think about the Black judges and the different groups you've advocated for, the state organizations to try to increase perspective
Yes,
in the lawyer industry,
that's
particularly
right.
from those who come from communities who often are disproportionately involved in the legal system. And you've done an outstanding job with your advocacy. Tell me more about that work and some of the joy that you've been able to share
Yeah.
doing advocacy work as an attorney.
Uh, when I came back to Kalamazoo in 2008, the one thing that I recognized right off the bat was that we didn't have an organization that was designed specifically to be a support structure for attorneys of color and those who were traditionally kind of left out of the profession or left having to fend for themselves within the profession. And so myself and one of the city attorneys at the time, Marcia Jones, we got together and we said, we need something else. We need a support structure with the goal of diversifying our legal industry here in Kalamazoo. It didn't have to be in the state of Michigan. It didn't have to be in the world. But in our sphere of influence here in Kalamazoo, the goal was, how do we make it so that there are more of us in places of high influence in law practices and in the court systems and the corporations. For instance, when I first got here, um, in larger law firms, there was there were zero African American attorneys, zero,
And when did you get here?
in 2008. And so I say large law firms. There were some solo practices out there, and then there was a couple of judges, and then there was really small firms that had people like Sid Williams was there. So he's been practice in a smaller IP firm, but they really were they. I did the work to figure out, okay, where are the black and brown attorneys, and they were not in major law firms. They just weren't there. And so when I got to Kalamazoo at a law firm called Miller Canfield, I changed that dynamic by one. And so
Yeah.
my goal at that point was, okay, we've got to change this scenario. I'm happy to say now that we have several people of color in large law firms. We even have some who are running their offices, running the local offices of those law firms. We have various folks that have opened up really successful practices themselves that are now growing their practices. We have several judges. We had some judges in the past, but we've got now several more that are operating. But the goal here was to provide a support system, a
Yeah.
mentoring system, and better yet, even more so than that, provide a system of being able to refer business to ourselves. Because a lot of times, yeah, that's how you get fed, is if your community is the ones who are supporting you. So that is something that we focused on way back in 2008. And then other areas that I've had some advocacy on is with the Kalamazoo Defender, helping to start that. I was the first actual full president of the board, or chair of the board of directors for that organization. Helped to form that prior to it actually even being formed with Josh Hilgard. So those are some of the areas that I really, really focus on, to just be, to begin to really think through what does inclusion, what does hearing voices, what does access, how does that really impact the quality of the profession that we have? And I think the answer is it impacts it at a high level. And so far, so good. And we're going to keep going.
It's got to feel good to see something different. I've got different points in my career too. You look back and you see places where there was nothing else, and now you see a lot of people. It's a blessing to look back and know that your work has impact, and you certainly have been a game changer in the legal profession for
Well,
the
I
whole region
appreciate
and
that,
beyond.
man. We see some impact, but we also know it has so much further to go. That
So
there's
much
no,
fun.
you don't, you can't sit back at all. You got to kind of keep moving, and even more than that, you have to make sure that the generation coming after you has that same fire in their belly as well. So that's an important aspect of what we're doing right now. If you The Judge Pratt Bar Association is the name of the organization that we started. And if you look at us now, we are really working to try to make sure that some younger folks are coming in and picking up the banner as well.
That's great. That's outstanding work. Yeah, man. I applaud you for that. Salute you for it. Keep it going. Um, Speaking of this system and the law and its seeming inconsistencies, you and I were talking off this podcast, and you said something to me that actually grabbed me so much. I said, "Man, we got to hurry up and get you on the podcast You were telling me about how our assumptions in the law about law and legal things are often in the way. For instance, the difference between being guilty and not guilty and what those terms actually mean. Like
Mm,
what, because I think people who have even been involved in the legal system don't necessarily understand what some of these basic things really mean. And the public perception is probably built around Law and Order, the TV show, more than the
yeah.
Law and Order that you experience in a courtroom. What are some of the misunderstandings about the law and how it is applied and what it really means?
The one we were talking about, Tim, I think I'll lead off with that because it is one that tends to shake people's thoughts at first. Is that in criminal law, we we presume a lot of times people think that the law is designed to determine truth from falsehood, that somebody actually did something or somebody actually didn't do something.
Right.
And we would like to think that, but that is really not, because the law bumps up against our system bumps up against its barriers. And so what I mean is that the when you think about a criminal trial, it's designed to not necessarily show if somebody actually did something or they actually didn't do something. It's designed to show whether or not someone is, under our system of law, going to be held accountable for a rule or law violation or not. And in the practice of the law, what we say is that there's a burden of proof. And the burden of proof in criminal law is that the prosecuting attorney, has to prove someone guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And it's specific there because it says beyond a reasonable doubt. They don't say beyond all doubt. And the reason why they don't say beyond all doubt is because the law is finite. It is not God. It's not omnipresent. It's not omniscient. It doesn't know everything. And so the system bumps up against its own limitations. And the system's limitations are that it can't know for 100% sure whether you actually did it or you didn't do it. What it can do is say that the prosecuting attorney has presented enough evidence that beyond a doubt that is reasonable in my mind, I believe you should be held responsible for a violation. Not that you did it 100%, but there's enough evidence that you should be held responsible for it. Things like the Innocence Project, where uh, gentlemen and women have been convicted 10, 20 years ago of crimes that, now convicted, meaning they were found guilty.
Right.
And as it turned out, once DNA science advanced enough, people were able to go back and say, well, let's test this dress or let's test this piece of evidence to see if this person's DNA is even there. And you find out that this person's DNA was never even in the vicinity of the crime that was being committed. So what does
Heartbreak.
that mean? What does that tell us? It tells us that the law is not perfect. The law runs up against its own limitations. And so at the end of the day, the law does not tell you who is absolutely guilty or who is absolutely innocent. It just tells you, collectively as a society, we've said, all right, about the best we can do is say, you got to convince us beyond a reasonable doubt that this person should be convicted of this crime. Not that they did it 100%, but beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, let me give you another example. It's not in the criminal law, but another example about our laws in general. Um, the law is the law is what we say it is when we say it is. The law
Okay.
is something that society has decided that we are going to um, regulate ourselves by at any given time. And so what that means is what might be legal 200 years ago, today is not legal.
Got it.
It hasn't changed. Slavery back then
Was legal.
and slavery by now, in my mind, is horrific. But back then, the same slavery, the same system that we had was considered legal. All right, that's one example. And now it's illegal. One example. Let me give you another example.
Hmm.
There was a time during Prohibition where we said alcohol was going to be illegal. And that's where you get the moonshiners, right?
Right.
And there was a time 20 or so years ago where cannabis, marijuana, was considered illegal. And although the federal government has not changed, most states have now made recreational marijuana legal. Now let me give you the flip and the sad state of affairs of the fact that our laws is what we say it is when we say it is. It's that there are people who 20 years ago have had to be found guilty under our rules of law to the of certain violations of things and spent many years in jail. And now there are those other people who are doing the exact same thing that 20
Exact
years
same.
ago we said was illegal, and they're making money hand over fist over it. And so the question that we now need to be asking ourselves is, how do we equal that playing field? Especially when our system is specifically oppressive, system of justice is oppressive more so to those of color than it is to those who are not. And so what that means is that the drug crimes of the past that were heavily enforced and people were sentenced, and now those same drug crimes are making a whole bunch of people money. Isn't there a throughput here where we should say, wait a minute, because those people are still alive. They ain't all dead.
And
So
suffering the
now,
consequence.
yes, they are. And looking at these folks wide-eyed because they just spent many years of their life on something that now society says, you know what? Not as bad as we thought. So at the end of the day, the law, I love the law. Like this is, I would rather live in the United States of America than any other place in the world. But the law in our system is still flawed. It has its limitations. And so people need to understand
It makes sense, but it's not comforting. You know what I mean? Like and I think so. Like if that is the case, why do we call it justice?
it.
If it's
You
not
know, that
about guilt or innocence or making things right, it's about, did the prosecutor prove the case best? And then when the law is what we say it is, that, depending on who gets to say it, that just doesn't feel like justice to me. Is there a
well,
better name? I don't want to get you in trouble. Like, why justice if that's what's for real?
it's our system of justice. It's justice means one thing in our system of justice. But if
Okay.
you're asking me morality, I'm not going to use the word justice. I'm not going to use the word our system of justice. You know, if I'm using justice as in we're going to do what's right, justice as in we want to make sure that righteousness occurs, that's a different conversation. And I think a lot of times people want to equate morality to our system of justice. And although there's interplay there, there
It's
is
not the
not
same thing.
not the same thing. It's not a complete overlap. It really isn't.
Yeah. When therein lies the point.
Yeah.
Therein lies why we need civics, because people really deeply move in their life around some incomplete beliefs about what the system of justice is and what it ain't.
Yeah.
And there are families who are grieving deeply
Yeah.
around what, in some cases, is a false idea about what the law is to provide and what it's not. And it just seems to me this is helpful, because the clarity is what you need. No matter how you feel about it, let's at least be clear on what it is and what it ain't, so we
And,
can
and
play the game.
let me. All right. So that's a real. What I just explained is a very cynical view of
Okay.
the law. Let
Help me
me
with
let
the other
me
side.
let me give a more holistic view of the law.
Let's go.
Um, and it still starts at the fact that we are not infinite beings. We are um we are limited.
Right.
And so what as society, so back when it was the strongest winds, right? Uh back when it was every man for himself, that was chaos. And so we as a system have decided, as a society rather, has decided that um, we need to put some rules into play, and we need to enforce those rules ourselves. And that's what society is. That's what community is. And that's what the law
Self-governing.
is. It is really a system of saying, we're not perfect. We're not God. All right. So, I mean, you know, back in the day, it was, if you go back to like the witch trials and all that other stuff, they would throw burn a witch at the stake, or somebody accused of being a witch at the stake. And then if they burned, then they weren't a witch. But if they didn't burn, then they were a witch. That's how they determine that kind of stuff. Or if you did it, they tie something around your neck and throw you into the water. And if you were innocent, you would float. But if you're guilty, you would go down. So we've decided we're going to govern ourselves better than that.
That's right.
Now I'm not. We don't. We're imperfect. We are limited, and so we put together a system that says, okay, it's not perfect, and we should all recognize it's not perfect. But what we really say is that we're going to require that prosecuting attorney to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. It's the highest standard that we have in the law system. There is preponderance of evidence. That's for civil cases. But for
Okay.
criminal cases, we say you got to prove me guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you fail to do that by a jury of my peers or by the judge, then I get to go away. It don't matter. I get to go off. And it doesn't matter whether I did it or whether I didn't do it. So we have put a very high standard on our system of justice. We really have. And so I can tell you that, again, it's not perfect, but we
But
got to
it's better than
recognize
being
that
burned at the stake.
it's better than being burned at the stake. It's better than the type of justice they had 500 years ago. I take this justice any day of the week. It's just still informed by not just its um, limitations, but it's also informed by systems of oppression that have been baked into the system. And it's hard to, if you start from scratch, that's a different story. But if you have something and then you're trying to weave it in and make it jury rig it into what you can make it's not as effective. And so there's so many vestiges of past oppression within the system that need to be acknowledged. Unfortunately, people don't acknowledge it much. Well, the people that can change it don't acknowledge it much.
I think that drives a lot of the emotion that you see, is that, people live with the realities of it. And then it's like, well, no, that's not real. So,
Yeah,
yeah. And here's an attorney who's been in the courtroom and understands
brother,
very clearly.
I've seen it firsthand. I've seen it firsthand that that you can have the same crime, the
Same
same
offenses.
circumstances, and depending upon the color of that person's skin, one will get a lesser sentence than the other one. Almost, I mean, it's statistically been proven. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just there. And we've got to acknowledge it. And I think the only way that you get beyond it is acknowledging
Yeah.
it.
Everybody's got a mountain in their industry they want to climb. Right? Everybody who competes has something they're reaching for. You've done a lot of different kinds of law. Is there a dream kind of case you would love to litigate or argue? Like, is there a type of work you haven't got a chance to do yet that you want to in the law?
You know what, Tim, that's an interesting one because it bleeds into another critique I have of the law as a whole. The law is very overly influenced by the economics of the law. So if you can hire the attorney, if you can hire a Warner Norcrossing judge, um, it significantly impacts the outcome of your case. If you have a criminal action, if you can get a good attorney, it significantly impacts how your case rolls. Um, and it's something that it's one of the reasons why I tend to stay super active and engaged in the resource in my community is because the economics of the law can freeze people and demographics out of uh, benefit of the law. So you asked me if there's a type of case or a type of something that I would like to do down the road next. Man, if I had if let's just say money wasn't an issue for me, like I ain't there yet. I'd love to be there, but let's just say money was not an issue. I would probably open up some type of free clinic and take on cases uh, that they're not currently entities that handle those kind of cases for certain economic demographics. And I probably would just try to, and I could see it be a situation where I would be training young attorneys and eventually they would go off and make their money and stuff, but they could cut their teeth, in my field, in my company where they would get paid something, but maybe not the high end, but they would learn a heck of a lot about how to practice law. And we would be able to do the services for free so that people who feel like they don't have a voice could have a voice in the law system. Again, there's some areas like legal aid helps folks, and the public defender, the Kalamazoo defender. Those areas help, but they have very defined areas. But there are some other areas out there that people need help, and so
That
I would
probably
probably.
go untouched if you don't have
That
the resources.
No, and don't get me wrong, Tim. I probably about 5 to 10% of my time I give away. I just that's just who I am. I've always done that, but I can't give all my time away, and so
Amen to that.
unfortunately, that means I have to turn certain people away, and that's always a hard thing for me to do. And so if I had a next level, one of those next levels. There's probably a couple of areas I would love to do, but if I had one that down the road, like I could say, maybe when I'm on my way to retirement, that I would like to do, it would definitely be something like that where I'll just look. You just come in. If I can't get you help at these other agencies, we're gonna do it for us for free here. I would love to do
I love that for you. I hope
that.
it happens because that means money won't be an issue and you'll be doing exactly what you need to want to do every day. I opened the podcast asking you about what drives you. Ended the podcast asking you about if you could do anything, what would you do?
Yeah,
And you went right back to giving back.
it's in me, man. I believe it. I honestly, Tim, not just because it's the right thing to do, but what I've learned is that I probably get more doing that as a whole, as a person, than not. I mean, and it feeds me. Tim, it feeds me. It feeds my personal well-being. It balances me out. I can have, the economic side of I'm making money, and then the other side of I'm giving part of myself for this. It feeds that part of me, keeps it balanced. But the crazy thing about it is it also, over my career, it's fed my career. And that's what's wild, I came in, like when I came back to Kalamazoo, my first board I got on was Douglas.
That's right.
You brought me on, man.
That's
And
right.
I mean, I've been on boards before, but here in Kalamazoo, this was my first one. I was like, okay, Douglas, I'll do that. And from then on, from Douglas to other United Way to Harold and Grace Upjohn to Bronson to Greenleaf Trust, all of these boards where I said, well, at least the initial ones was just, hey, I just want to help. And now, before you know it, it's, hey, we need your diverse viewpoint here on our board to help run these companies. And who are the other board members of these companies? People of C suites at businesses that have legal spin. And now, before you know it, the passion that I have to want to give is round circle, giving right back into me on the financial side of it as well. So I am a living proof that do what you're passionate about, and it'll find a way to feed you. I believe that.
It really does, man. I had the same experience. Young, and you're the diverse person on the board in a lot of
Yeah,
cases, but you come in to serve and to learn.
yeah,
And through those new relationships, man, doors swing open. And I think, we people need to be encouraged, not just on the civics or on the understanding and critical thinking, but on the service, the giving back, because it really does give to you when you give. And it's about giving your time. And as you grow and get exposed to more, you're able to do more.
yeah.
And we need more, particularly of us doing it. We need more people at the table with perspectives that are unique
True,
around those
true that,
tables.
and it's the wise organizations that
Yep.
recognize that, and
Amen to that.
they are looking. They're looking for the ones,
They are.
they're looking for folks who are ready and want, not just want to serve, but willing to invest in themselves to get to that level of bringing value, even more value, not just your perspective, but your acumen, your professional value to
That's
the
right.
table. So I
That's
mean,
right.
and we got some wonderful organizations out there, man. I mentioned Bronson, but I'll mention Greenleaf Trust. I mean, good Lord. I mean, that organization, and I know you work with them a little bit, Tim, but that organization, if there's any organization out there that's really doing the work, trying to culturally wise make sure that they are inclusive and make sure that they are welcoming to everybody. Greenleaf Trust is really that type of organization. To put their first Black board member on their board in me was just it's
Huge.
not lost on me, man. And then we brought
No,
in Bill Mans just recently, and in my mind, I'm just thinking this organization is doing the intentional thing, really going out there intentionally to change and move the ball, and that to me means a lot. It means a lot to
I tell you, man, as you know, I get to see them. I
me.
get to see the serious organizations and the non-serious ones.
Yeah.
And I remember a great story from the great comedian and civil rights leader, Dick Gregory, who was talking to his 7-year-old son who came in the room crying, "Daddy, Daddy, my siblings are making fun of me because I built this castle and I'm acting like I live there." And he said, "Well, son, it's cool as long as you don't make it your address." And then he went on to talk about that's the difference. Those who are playing the game and those who have made it their address. And
Mm,
Greenleaf Trust has made inclusion their address. They pulling up. They really are
they are.
trying. And they're making it a part of the spine of the organization from top to bottom. And it's not about arriving, it's about the commitment to become.
Yeah.
And when you can see it from the board seat, and I can see it from where I come, it's just an example of the difference between those who are playing games and those who have made the work their address. And
Mm,
I think
mm,
it's powerful when I get to work with organizations and you're seeing it, who show up for the people stuff in a real way. They put their money and their policy and their practice where their mouth is and where their website is. And
that's
that's
right.
a game changer.
It's Tim. It's I. This conversation has naturally flowed into the path that both of us have passions in, uh, and I know that you've helped some organizations uh, navigate the different dynamics of coming from the current administration with respect
Mhm.
to inclusion and equity.
That's right.
Um, with the various boards that I'm on, Western, Bronson, and others, there's a real dynamic right now of trying to figure out how do we get it right, because there's the economic side of it, and then there's the moral side of it, and there's the, hey, when Floyd uh, happened and all of these other social justice issues came, everybody got on the table and down, had statements out there and commitments. And now that these are our core values, and now that we're being tested on really how real those core values are, it's hard to navigate for organizations. But there are some organizations hasn't even been a question. But I've been on the other side of some of these other organizations where we really struggle with, all right, what's the line? How do we draw? But there's some organizations, we said it was our core value. It's our core value. We don't even need to talk about it anymore. They're not changing nothing. They're not moving. In fact, they're leaning in. And so Greenleaf Trust is one of those organizations, man. I just love them for it. Absolutely.
Ain't no
I'm
question
done.
about it.
This is not a Greenleaf Trust sponsorship program either. So
No, they're not a sponsor of the program, but they are an organization who is endeavoring every day. And that's important because
that's
some
really
have
important.
just stopped. Many have just stopped. They were, soft on it to begin with,
Yeah, it
and
was
they
an inch deep.
continued. Right,
Yeah,
yeah, and so, but that's okay. I mean, here's the thing. I think every organization, no matter what choice you made, it's never too late to tap in.
that's right.
Somebodyness is something you can practice all the time, and it's
That's right.
strategic. You know what I mean? And you can live those values anytime you decide. And so I think there's an invitation there, not for consulting, but for conviction about, do you want to maximize your people power or not?
Or not. Or not.
Or
And
they
and you
just
know
keep
what?
calling you when it goes left.
Yeah. But with these organizations, the bottom line speaks for itself. At
Yeah,
the end of the day, you look at that bottom line, you can tell the organizations that really have starting to become a part of their DNA, because that
yeah,
bottom line
they're talking.
is proving it. In my
Yeah,
mind. So I have my organization here at Warner has done some similar work. I mean, they really really want to get it right, and so I can appreciate them.
yeah, man, and this work, because back to your point of the systems limitations, well, it's human limitations. And
Yep.
we carry a lot of stuff with us that's not productive to team and collaboration and excellence. And so, in some cases, we got to get aware of that and unpack it. And it takes leaders to help us remember. It takes moments to step up and people who advocate to remind us of where we got room to shift back to the basics that we know. Every great team, every great grouping of people have some similarities about how they show up with each other. And one way they're not doing it is divided and unable to see the power of every person on the team. Like
That's
that,
right.
I don't know no great team where every player isn't looking each other in the eye with some dignity.
Right. That's true.
Right. So, I mean, I think in a lot of ways it's getting back to the basics, and you help do that work at so many levels. James, any final thoughts for folks as you think about what people can do in community? Your life is of service and giving back. What advice or encouragement do you have for those who want to stay active in their community and grow as professionals too?
Yeah, I'm happy you asked that question because it's been on the back of my mind as we were talking. The point I would end with is to carve out availability.
Mm.
um, carve out access to you. And a lot of times, because quite honestly, it's easy to have a 9 to 5, or, in our profession, it's, yours is as busy as mine. It's pretty much, 12-hour days is the norm. And so after that, you don't feel like you have a lot of extra time, energy for a lot of extra, because you're giving of
Yeah,
yourself
yeah.
all the way through. And so I don't turn away one phone call from here at Warner, at my office here. My assistants will call and say, hey, uh Pookie from down the street says that he got an issue he needs to talk to you about. You gonna talk to him? Yes, patch him through. I want to hear, even if all I'm doing is listening, even if
Right.
all I'm doing is taking 10 minutes of my time and saying, okay, not the kind of practice that I do, but I got somebody over here. I'm going to give them a call and we'll see if they can help you through that situation. Or maybe it's, you know what? I hear what you're saying. I can't give you legal advice, but let me just tell you that my quick opinion is that you don't really have much of a case on this one. And let me tell you why. And those folks leave not be smiling, not because I gave them the answer that they wanted, but smiling because they got information that helps them and gives them a sense of closure that they did what they needed to do to make the right decision about something and being listened to, like you just pointed. Yeah, absolutely. And so I made it a point in my life. My poor receptionist and my poor assistant, they call, people call all the time. I don't turn anybody away. I will call you back. We will have a conversation. It may not be immediately when you need me to call you back, but I'm gonna call you back. We're gonna
What
have
you
a
gonna
good
hear from 'em?
conversation. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. I don't, or I'm going to send you to somebody that can help you think it through. I, it's my small part of saying, look, I'm going to stay active. I'm going to stay available rather. And I'm not going to put up a barrier so that all I have is the economic side of who I am and not the community side of who I
That's right.
am. And it's important. It's a way that I give a little bit of my time every day, man. And I don't mind that at all.
Like you said, man, it's in your DNA.
Well, yeah,
It's in
it
your
is,
DNA.
and I think it's in a lot of people. I know it's in yours and everybody's. You cut your teeth on public service and community service, so was preaching to the choir a little bit, I'm sure.
I tell you, I gave many a free speech before they paid me a wet nickel to speak to anybody. And I mean, still to this day, man, giving, you give away what you need. And if you want
Yeah,
prosperity, you give it. You give other
that's
people
right.
opportunities to have that. And it just works. James, thank you for coming aboard on Unstuck, man. It's been a great conversation. I salute you, brother, and the work you're doing, and cheer you on to continue good work in the future, man.
Right back at you, too.